Coach Chizik, Gina, your experience obviously as either a head coach or coordinator, whatever, those bye-week practices, what are the main things that you're looking for from a defense or from any?
I think the first objective of a bye week is to go back and really evaluate what has happened in the previous, in our case, 4 weeks, and really look and see what where we can improve. Look and just do a true thorough assessment of your productivity or lack of productivity, but clean those things up first. That's always number one, and that's a lion's share of the week, right? Because you really have a good sample size of things to look at. But cleaning things up is number one, and number two, when you can introduce your opponent maybe a day or two in advance, that's kind of the next objective. But really and truly, this game is always an us versus us game, right? It doesn't really matter what the opponent does. It really matters what you do. And so that was really where we spent the lion's share of our time, was really focusing on us and the little details that matter when it comes to production.
And going off of that, what did you make of? Mac was saying that he felt the practices went pretty well last week. What did you make of how the defensive unit approached practice last week?
I was really proud. I feel like a lot of times. And it matters, depends on where you are in the season. But a lot of time, guys can, kind of lose focus in those, environments when you don't have a game, the next week. But our guys did not. They were very focused. They were really attentive and really interested in when we weren't good, why, and the focus was fixing those problems that we identified. So they were really, really focused. I thought we had 3 really good practices. Well, 4 counting yesterday, or what is this, Monday? Sunday. But yes, we had some productive practices, and they were all in it.
I asked Mac about previously, certainly before you came here, but at times last year, that at times you could sense a panic on the defense when things weren't going well, they kind of spiral. How discernible is the difference to you now when you go through a stretch where maybe it's not going great, but they're still under control, whereas a year ago there may have been that sense of panic that allowed things to continue for a while?
It's like anything. You try to create habits in guys that, allow you to function when things aren't necessarily going well all the time. That's a mindset in a lot of ways, right? But it also comes with some confidence that, everything's going to be okay. And to your point, that happened at Pitt, right? It happened the first couple of drives where, we saw some things that we needed to adjust to. And there was never any panic. And that's the great thing about having guys that have played a lot of football, which we do. That they can sit down and focus on what we're saying and how we're trying to adapt and adjust to whatever's going on in that moment. And they have the wherewithal to be able to do that, absorb the information, and go out and execute, right? So, but it's, I think it comes with experience. I think it comes with maturity of a team. But probably more importantly, it comes from, the coaches and, how we respond in those moments with them. And I think our coaches down on the sideline do a great job with that. Of, when things aren't going well, let's settle down. Let's talk about what's going on. And let's talk about how to fix it.
Does it affect how you call a game?
Not necessarily. We go into every game with a plan, and we feel good about whatever that plan is, knowing that you have to adapt and adjust some based on the X's and O's and some things that you're seeing. But we don't ever adapt and adjust on a game plan based on some sort of, panic, so to speak.
Or more situationally, I guess.
It's situational for sure. There's times in a game when you call the game and you say, all right, we're not executing at a high level. Let's just settle down and do some things that we know they're extremely comfortable with. So there's those type of adjustments for sure. So it's very situational. But I call the game based on the plan that we have in place, and then we adapt and adjust from there.
Gene, go ahead, Tim.
At this point in the season, you kind of know what a team's going to do. It felt like against Pitt, maybe they were doing something you didn't expect earlier and you adjusted. Does it get easier into a season preparing for a team based on what they've put on tape thus far? Do you still expect the unexpected, like Chip mentioned a little bit earlier?
I think it's a little bit of you expect the unexpected every week with a couple of things, you know. This point in the season, offenses are who they are, generally speaking. I think that's kind of the job of the offensive coordinator, right? To throw a new wrinkle and put some things in there that maybe they haven't put on tape thus far. That's easier to do in weeks, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Kind of as you start getting to the back of the season, the back part of the schedule, games 7, 8, 9 in there. You've pretty much seen everything at that point, either from somebody else, even if you haven't seen it from that particular team. And so as the season goes on, it gets a little bit easier because if somebody, springs something on you that they haven't done necessarily, there's probably a really good chance that somebody else has done that. And then there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of coordinators out there that will see, what has worked on you in the past, even though that isn't really part of what they do, and they'll put it in their game plan. And so you have to be, you always have to be mindful that can happen. But again, as the season goes on, you kind of see everything you're going to see at one point or the other or another. So it's really, it's easier to adjust to those things.
Gene, I was going to ask you on Garrett Schrader. Well, I guess it was the Purdue game. When you saw that he ran for 195 yards, did your eyes bug out when you saw that? Because I think a lot of people did. Is that number right?
Yes.
Was that your reaction?
Yes. It was pretty interesting because that was definitely an eye-opening game for sure. He's just a big guy, and he's really, really athletic and moves so well in space. But he's a hard guy to tackle. Like, he's a combination of both, right? Some of it's off quarterback scrambles. Some of it's off design quarterback runs, and that's the thing. So there's a really good mix in there with how he gains his yards. But what you do know is that you always have to account for where he is and what the situation is, and his ability to take the football, run with it, whether it was planned as a designed quarterback run or not. And it really, I'll tell you, you go back and you look at how many third down conversions he's had. We talked about that yesterday as a defense. How many third down conversions that he's had when coverage is good, everything looks exactly the way it ought to look, and then he sees a seam in there and he hits that seam, and then all of a sudden, you're back to 1st and 10 again. So we're very aware of what he does as a runner. It's a huge challenge for us to be able to make sure that you can keep him in the pocket, eliminate, I don't know if you'll totally eliminate, but obviously minimize how many yards he gets by improvising and adjusting. But he's a really good player. So he is what the team goes offensively as he goes, and he's that good.
Speaking on Syracuse offensively, 2 of his top targets, Alfred and Patrick, 6'6" and 6'3" respectively. What kind of challenges does that present in coverage, specifically at the cornerback, and even maybe having to set safeties and help there?
Yeah, it is very challenging. And then they do some things schematically where they get these guys in a position where you can't necessarily just line a guy up on him and say, I'm going to, press this guy and I'm going to take him all over, cover him all over the park. So they do a good job of both, but anytime you have guys that are that big, it's definitely challenging. Those DBs are going to be 5'10" to 6 foot. So you always want to be able to try to use your safeties as help on guys like that. And then you got to do a really good job of when they put those guys in a position where you can't necessarily press them or play them man-to-man because they're the only guy out there and it's me versus you. They don't let that happen a lot. So the scheme is really good. Their physical presence obviously is a challenge, but those are two really big, good targets for them.
Gene, Elijah Huzzy, I think it's fair to say, has been very good this season. Is there something particular that he does that only a trained eye could see that sets him apart on the field?
Well, I've said this about him before. At that position, if you're really going to be a cut above everybody else, then instincts have to play a huge part in that. But obviously the last game he played, he was very productive, but he's been very productive in some other games. As a matter of fact, he's been really close to 3 or 4 other interceptions that, he just couldn't quite close, and some of them would have been spectacular. But he does it in practice, so therefore he does it in the game. But he's got really good instincts. He's got football savvy. I mean, just watch him as a punt returner. And if you go back and look at his punt returns, and using this as an example, just an all-around good football player, how many really good decisions he's made back there that's really saved us a good amount of hidden yards, because he's smart and he understands football. And so his best days to me are still ahead of him, but he is a very instinctive guy, and that's why he's different.
Gene?
Go ahead. I was just going to ask sort of, you just talked about Schrader, obviously, his ability to run. You saw several quarterbacks that are ahead for you guys last year on the schedule, like Klubnik and Riley Leonard and Tyler Van Dyke. Just from a coordinator standpoint, like when you look at the quarterbacks in the ACC, kind of what stands out to you, especially with so many of them playing at a high level, and it's not really it's pretty much a test for you every week, depending on the style of the quarterback.
Yeah, it really is. It's a very unique situation, especially for us, like in the next month, right? 4 or 5 weeks. These guys are productive. They're smart. They've got really great football savvy and moxie. You go and you look at, when the games are close and the games are on the line, you can usually look, and they're always very productive in those critical moments normally. But I think the common denominator for all those guys is that they've got great athletic ability. They see the field well. And it's the sixth sense of a quarterback to me, and all the great ones that I've been around. It's that sixth sense of, yes, I can throw it on this timing and get it in this window right now, and it happens. Or, you know what, that's not open. Let me take the ball, let me take it down and run with it. Knowing situational football, down and distance, right? They see an escape window, it's 3rd and 8, they get it from 9. So you see all those little things that these guys have the ability to do, and it's very challenging. It's very challenging on not just a day in and day out, not just a down in and down out basis, but 3rd downs. You got to be very judicious on how you approach 3rd downs, because you got them to 3rd down. And when you're in a favorable 3rd down situation, right, 3rd and 6, or 3rd and 7, or 3rd and 8, percentages say you win those. But those guys, if you're not really careful on how you approach that, they can get that 1st down, and now you're back out there for a minimum of 3 more plays. So I just think all of those guys, they've got something to them as far as sixth sense, great athletic ability, and great vision and awareness over the whole football field. That's probably true with every one of those guys that you just mentioned.
And to follow up, just I'm curious, like you've done a deep dive on Schrader. It's game week, you got to play him. How do you look ahead much at the guys ahead? I mean, you've seen some of them before. Do you kind of, as a defensive mind, look around him like a Jordan Travis, who is a part of staying not on the schedule but might be in a title game? How aware are you beyond the game week, or is it totally Garrett Schrader, period, right now?
It's a Garrett Schrader, period, right now. There is no other quarterback in my mind right now, and that's just that might not be everybody, but for me, like, that's just how I think, right? So those are problems for another day. So I don't borrow trouble.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's problems for another day.
Speaking of Schrader, what exactly are you expecting to need out of your pass rush and your D line to try to contain him? Because he can turn something that could be a sack into a 20.
Yes, he can. I really and truly, it's just the discipline of the rush, right? And pass rush is a very unique art to study because, in most situations, you have 6 pass rush lanes with 4 pass rushers. So you can do the math that there can be some spacing there, right? And I think the art of understanding pass rush, and not only to be great at pass rush, but to be able to understand that, okay, look, there's 6 lanes here, and I've only got 4 guys. So how are we going to constrict those lanes and not open those lanes up so that they see these, chasms in their place, these areas to run in? And then how does the second level play into this with guys that are in coverage, that have the ability to come out of coverage right now if it is a scramble situation? So the pass rush together has to always work together with the people behind them. And I'm speaking strictly on a 4-man pass rush. When you start adding more guys in there, 5 and 6 guys, then all the pass rush lanes should be filled up. But then you've got to make sure that you're good in the coverage end, right? So you want your eyes poked out or your nose cut off, which one you want sometimes, right? So, but it's a challenge for sure. And these quarterbacks, they give you a day's worth of work now for sure.
No time for one more.
Gene, you're talking about doing the math. The math on Rucker continues to be quite good. Obviously you watch the way he's playing, and then the numbers show up there too. I mean, how far do you think he can take this thing? I think it's 4 sacks through 4 games, 7.5 tackles for loss, and it seems like the pass rush ID is expanding. If you look at some of the moves he put on those dudes for Pitt, or at least to someone like me, it looks like it's expanding. Like, how far can you take it?
Yeah, I'm really proud of him because he's one of these guys that really works every day at his craft to be great at it. He's really open to coaching and ideas, and just loves football. So I think his upside is huge. I think it's however far he wants to take it, and but he's growing. He knows when there's things that he's doing that need to be corrected. He knows it right when it happens, and that's always a good sign, right? Like, I tried this, that didn't work. Like, he'll be able to get on the headset with me and say, no, that's not, I know what happened on that, And you can have intelligent football conversations with him, but the way he works on the field, and the way he practices, the way he works at his craft during practice, after practice, and he works at it.
Yeah.
And I think the sky is I think it's unlimited for him on where he can go, for sure.